All right, so my role here is to give you a little appetizer version of team coaching. We teach a whole course on this, and I think the next course is being offered September 11th online for people that are interested, where we're going to go really deep and over several days on all of the delicious material related to team coaching. So what can I do to give you a little taste test? As I was thinking about this, actually, as I was sort of dreaming about this in the great flow of life somewhere, what came to mind actually was just to tell you a story. It's a stakeholders kind of story. And I think in this story, I can help you think about all the tools that you've already covered so far in the course, in modules 1, 2, and 3, and show you how, in one case study, we can put together all the elements of what you've learned so far in coaching in a team environment. Does that sound like it might be of interest to you?
Yes.
Okay, let me just check in for a minute. How many people here work with teams presently in some capacity or another? Okay, quite a few of you. Great. And are these, in what settings are these? Just throw out some answers for me. Project management? Organizations? Education? Network marketing?
Healthcare?
Government? Great. Any community settings, perhaps? A few of those as well? Okay, boards of directors. Terrific. Okay. So lots of delicious diversity here. So, I mean, I could have picked 100 examples, but I thought, you know, I'm going to just speak from the ecology of my own life here and give you a story that's quite meaningful to me, too, in the bargain. So I need to tell you a little bit of background to do that. So let me go to travel to 2003. I was living in Toronto at the time, and I have 2 children, by the way. At present, now they're 14 and 16, but at this time they were 6 and 8. Maybe they were older than that. I'm doing the math wrong. Doesn't matter. They were young. My oldest child, Eric, was in grade 3, and I have been involved with community and organization development for about 25 years as a freelance consultant and a coach and playing a number of different roles. And I was always career-oriented. And then my children came along and came crashing into my life and completely transformed it in a way that I never could have imagined. I've just learned so much from my kids. But my oldest child in particular has been the biggest teacher I could ever ask for in all of my work related to diversity and cross-cultural and, you know, all the dimensions of diversity. And that is because he has autism. How many people know somebody with autism? Quite a few, yes. When Eric was first diagnosed at the age of 3, I think the stats were 1 in 250 children are diagnosed with autism. Now it's 1 in 90. Only in a 16-year span. It's really a kind of diversity that's on the rise. So, 2003, Eric was in about grade 3, and you know, my life has all been about diversity and inclusion, so naturally I became an advocate for my son and got involved in many different levels of advocating, certainly in the school system, on the school board, at the, you know, for coalitions for inclusive education, for the Advocacy Association of Canada. I mean, all kinds of different levels. But it was always focusing on getting people to open their minds and getting people to stop being this or stop doing that. And it was very much moving away from orientation. For those of you in academia, you understand anti-racist education, anti-oppressive education, anti-homophobia training, all these kinds of things. That's, you know, the world I lived in at that time. So one day, when I was particularly exhausted and worn out and frustrated and behind in 16 projects, and the house had laundry piled everywhere, and the dishes weren't done, and I was trying to get the kids out the door for school in the morning. And, you know, we couldn't find the lunch kits, and they weren't getting ready. And, you know, I was just, at that time, so frustrated by everything that was going on. And I had this big ball of rage in my stomach about the way Eric was excluded at school, and how kids bullied and teased him, and how nobody really seemed to care. And even though I would try to, you know, send resources and lay ideas for workshops at the foot of educators, they didn't seem interested, right? And I had all these ideas, but nobody wanted to sort of pick up the ball and run with it. So that's the headspace I was in. And at this time, Eric was really interested in card games. And he became totally fascinated with mastering all the rules of these card games. And I thought, great, this is a way to help him work with other kids, and I could facilitate them working, you know, playing together, taking turns, and showcase some of his strengths, because he was really good in math and quite a smart little guy. So we were doing this, and, you know, the odd card game would happen, but for the most part, it was a sad and pretty lonely time in our life. And so this particular morning was when I was at my absolute worst. And I'm trying to get the kids out the door for school, and nothing's happening, right? And finally I go, can we please just get to school on time? I would like to be successful at something! And my little kids look at me, and their eyes are this big. And I go, okay, look, I'm really sorry. Can we just go to school? So off we go. We're walking to school. And about a block down the road, I said, you know, guys, I feel really stupid for yelling at you, and I'm so sorry. And, you know, please know this is about me, and I'm frustrated and tired, and it has nothing to do with you. You're doing the best you can. You're just little kids. And Eric looked at me, and he said, trump card. And I said, what? Trump card? He said, trump card, Mommy. Don't you know? Don't you know, Mommy? You're my highest trump card. And it was one of those pivotal moments of life where I kind of, you know, I just got this big download that, you know, I could put all this focus on the people out there and what they weren't doing and how narrow-minded they were and all this stuff. Or I could actually focus on the fact that I love my boy. And I just want him to have a really great life. I mean, that's what we all want for our kids, right? Yeah. We just want them to have a great life, and to have a life that they choose, and to grow to their potential, and to do the best they can, right? And it was like when I figured out that if I put my focus on how much I loved my kid and how I wanted to make a better life for him, that was when everything changed for me. Everything changed like 180 degrees. It was like love is the, you know, it's the fuel that's renewable. It's the thing that's so enduring that has never gone away. So that's my preamble to team coaching, believe it or not, folks. So let's fast forward several years. And here I am at Erickson. And of course, over these years, I've been in this dance of how do I have a fulfilling, rewarding, enriching career, satisfying all my intellectual needs, and how do I do the work that's so important to advocate for my son Eric and children like him. And of course, it was here that I discovered my purpose, here through the Erickson training course, that really, you know, what I care deeply about is creating a world where everybody gets to thrive. Everybody. Doesn't matter how big or small you are, how old or young you are, we have this evolutionary spark inside of us that never goes away. And we all are growing towards something all the time, and that's what we want, is to thrive. And it's our mammal brain that wants us to help our children do the same thing, right? Okay, so one day I'm at a conference here. It was an autism summit, and I heard the most remarkable musician. I was just absolutely amazed at this boy. His name is Matthew Savage, for any of you who've heard of him. He's a pianist, a jazz pianist. He's been called the Mozart of jazz. And at the time that I saw Matthew, he was about 12 years old. And this guy was just stunning. He composed all this music, and he played in a trio, you know, with a big bass player and a cello. But he has autism. And he stepped on the stage and he said, let me tell you folks about 7/8 musical signature. And then he would start talking about how he composed this song, and he would give a little background, then he'd sit down and he'd play, and honest to goodness, it was jaw-dropping, his talent. So the concert goes on, we're filled with awe, and then it ends. And he steps off the stage to walk away and sit at the table where he's going to sign his DVDs that he's selling. And as soon as he stepped off the stage, everything fell apart. And it was like, then you could see he had autism. You know, he started flapping his hands, and he was crashing into people, and the eye contact fell apart. And all that charm and poise that I saw on the stage, it completely disappeared. And the person next to me kind of went, look at that, boy, can you see, boy, you can sure see his autism. And I said, I am so not interested in that. How did he do that? How did he do that thing he did up there that was so magical, where the whole audience was spellbound? So I was sitting in this question for a few months, and at that time I was here at Erickson. I need some water. And I was saying, gee, wouldn't it be amazing to create some kind of a circumstance where people with autism could actually be showcased or seen for their, you know, their brilliance, their wit, their intelligence. I mean, we all have unique gifts. Thank you, thank you. We all have unique gifts. I mean, some of us are brilliant piano players, and some of us are something else, right? So it was just a few days later, a woman came knocking at my door, and her name's Marianne Kaplan, and she's a filmmaker. And she had produced a documentary film about her son who had autism, who was bullied in school, and then what the family did about it. And this film had won some awards internationally. She lives in Vancouver, though, and she said, somebody said, come see you because you're a community organizer, and maybe you have some ideas for me about how I could use my film to benefit the local community. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do have some ideas. And so this is how this team coaching event began. So it was like a little seed of an idea that started with, you know, that classic coaching question up there, number one, what do I want? It started with that. What do I want? I want to create a place where people with autism are actually seen for their brilliance and their wonderfulness, not for their deficits. And so I said, why don't we create a public education event or a series of events and somehow figure out how to showcase the skill sets of people with autism. Great. So we ended up writing a community grant. For those of you who are looking for alternative ways to make money to fund projects, listen up. So we wrote a grant, and we got about, I don't know, 75,000 bucks or something. Not a lot of money, but enough to get started. Okay, so this grant was called an innovations grant, community innovations grant. And we proposed to do 6 community education events. And so here I'm just going to give you some of the structure of this project. And within that, we were going to show the film, which is about 45 minutes long. And it tells a heart-rendering story about this family and their struggle. And it's an important story to tell because a lot of people don't get how challenging it is to have autism and be excluded by the world, right? But we don't want to stop there, because in the coaching world, of course, it's about appreciative inquiry, right? So we said, okay, let's then bring out a panel of 6 boys who have autism or Asperger's. I like to say autism spectrum differences, not autism spectrum disorder. And they're going to do a Q&A with the audience and talk about their lives and teach people about what it is to have autism. But it's going to be about what are their hopes and dreams, and what are they excited about, and what are they really good at. And so these boys went through a 12-week training program in public speaking. And then the next part of the event was that I got people to sit in small groups in the audience and talk about what was so fascinating and interesting about what you heard from these boys. What was unique? What surprised you? What really blew your doors off? Because their doors were really blown off, let me tell you. So it was all about what was working, what was positive, what was fascinating and interesting. And then I invited the groups to report out on what are some things that you notice already in your community or your school or your workplace that are embracing of differences, that are pockets of progressiveness, that are, leading edge thinking. And let's talk about what's working in our communities, not all the things that aren't working. And so we got people talking about things that were working and then sharing with the large group, the large audience. All these small groups reported out what was working, and they started sharing resources. And then the last part of this event was that people had opportunity to meet the boys and their parents one-on-one and do networking, and we had, of course, local community groups set up with resource tables and all that sort of thing. So this design evolved out of conversation about what do we want to create, and how can we do this in a way that has an appreciative inquiry lens. Okay, now I'm going to get into the Ericksonian tools in just a second. This particular dialogue here with the small groups, of course, ended with what's been the value of attending this event today, and what are you taking away from this experience? Coaching question, you recognize that, right? It was amazing. We thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could get like 25 or 50 people to come to each event? We did 6 different cities in British Columbia. Well, actually 5 cities, because we did 2 events in Vancouver. We thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get like 25 or 50, maybe 100 people per event? And I have to tell you that over 1,600 people attended our events. And these boys were the star of the show. And the largest audience they had was something like 545 people. It was amazing. And they were so poised and gracious and funny. They had the audience laughing and crying. It was just amazing. So that's the public face of the project. But here's the inside story. Of course, my interest in this was creating something that would be helpful for my son and kids like him, but I also am interested in leadership development and coaching. So I said, okay, the parents of these youth, 6 mothers, it turned out they were all mothers. I said to them, okay, you're going to be bringing your kid to the training event, the training for the event, and there was a 12-week program. So while they're getting their training, let's plan this whole thing together as a group and form a team. So I said, what would you like to learn personally as a result of participating in this project? So there's all kinds of leadership opportunities here. How would you like to grow in your own sense of leadership? And so one person said, well, I'm terrified of public speaking. I'd really like to be seen as a leader in my community. Is there any way I could get some help with that? I said, absolutely. So one person's goal was around public speaking. Another person said, well, I have no idea how to put together a deal like this and get community agencies to be partners, and how do you get people to buy in on something like this. So, how to work with organizations, and how do you develop projects like this? Another person said, I'm from Taiwan, and I've been here about 6 months. And in my community, if somebody has special needs, we just keep them at home. And I would really like to be able to speak out about autism. And I would like to feel proud to bring my son out in the community. And can you help with that? I said, you betcha. So there were all kinds of different interests and needs. But as a group, we said, what do we want? Why is it important to us? How might we get it? What's it going to look like? What does it look like? How do we know when we've got it? So we were asking these 4 planning questions all along. And so we had planning meetings for 14 weeks where we came up with the idea that it was going to be 6 community events. And we came up with the idea that we were going to go big or go home. So we picked big places like the Surrey Arts Centre with a capacity of 700 people, and movie theaters and different kinds of venues like that, rather than something, we wanted a nice venue. So we did that. The team themselves came up with the idea of getting community groups to participate and set up resource tables and have all kinds of additional resources for the people that came that day so that they could get further information about integration, about inclusion, about supporting people on the spectrum. So we did all of that, and then I gave one-on-one coaching to each of the mothers on the issues of their choice. And one of the themes that emerged from this group, because we used the Disney strategy in particular about laying out the details of this plan. So, we started with the visionary place, and then we moved into the realist, and then we looked at everything from the lens of the critical advisor back to the realist again, right? So what emerged from here was that all of these women felt really exhausted, overextended. They didn't feel like they had a voice. They felt like people didn't treat them seriously, like they were just some kind of emotional mother. And they really wanted to step into their strength and feel like they could participate in public discourse around important issues like social inclusion. And so this was the kind of thing that emerged out of the team environment, using all of the Ericksonian tools. So do you want to know the outcomes of the story? Yes. Well, let's see if I can remember them all. So for the boys, let's see, there's all kinds of outcomes here. We're talking about a whole stakeholders conversation. So there's the boys, there's the mums, there's the community itself, and there's an additional person on the list here, a graduate student I want to tell you about. How's my time?
There's a clock in front of you.
Oh, it's 5:30.
But
okay.
tell us the outcomes really quick.
Yeah, I will. I'll tell you the outcomes real quick in like 2 minutes. Okay, so the graduate student, what happened was we realized we didn't have enough money to hire somebody to be a coordinator. So I went to UBC and found a prof who had somebody in the field around community development or special ed who had some grad students who might have been looking for a thesis topic. And we found a match with someone who was willing to join our project. And she trained the boys. She did the whole developing the curriculum to train them in public speaking. And she got her master's degree out of the deal, out of participating in our project, yes. So for what the boys got was measured and published in 3 journals now, increased self-confidence, increased clarity of their self-concept, advocacy skills, public speaking skills. We built into the budget, they got paid for every time that they spoke in public, so they earned money. So that was a major win for the boys. They had, and this stuff was all measured scientifically, all of their gains. For the mothers, it was increased self-confidence. They, all of them ended up starting their own groups in the future in other different kinds of, circumstances, because they were all from different communities. Community itself, it was increased organizing. There was a greater network developed. There was capacity built. There was all kinds of benefits to the community. 1,600 people attended events. All kinds of people connected with each other. And the grad student ended up, of course, she got her master's degree, but the boys ended up on the front cover of the Autism Symposium Guide for the annual Autism Conference. They were on the front cover, and then they were the featured speakers at one of the annual conferences. So it was absolutely amazing, all the different things that came out of this one little stakeholders conversation, and the switch from, instead of focusing on what's not working, the what do we want instead. So here's a team coaching case study for you guys you can use.
Isn't that awesome, you guys?